Hello, fine folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. This evening I'm not playing. I am playing with questions. I'm doing an I'm doing an interview. My guest today, I'm going to read from his Wikipedia page. Says that Glenn Drover is a Canadian heavy metal guitarist from Ottawa, Ontario. Sorry. I'm on the wrong page. Sorry. Um, Glenn Drover was the founder of and the president of Eagle Games, and which today is Eagle Griffin Games, and he's the designer of Sid Meier's Thief, Railways of the World, and many more. This year's Mosaic, Raccoon Tycoon, Wizard, and so on, other games. Someone who's been in the business for a while, and I'm very happy to have him here today. Welcome, Glenn, to Booghy Plays.
Thanks for having me, Booghy.
Uh, I almost made you a guitar player for Megadeth.
It's funny because sometimes when I check into hotels, they think that's who's checking in, and they're very disappointed when it actually turns out to be me.
You have disappointed a lot of people.
A lot of hotel concierge.
How is life in USA with blizzards and storms?
Yeah, it was very cold for the last few days, just leading up to Christmas, and we're just about to get over it. But we have a little bit of snow, and excuse me, very cold still, almost zero.
Okay, well that's nice. You have a merry white Christmas then. Yeah.
We-
I hope I hope the connection is good. Okay. Hope you're good. I hope you feel good. You're not able to see this. You're on your phone right now. You're not being able to see the live stream. So, you're. I will paint you a kind of a picture. You're in a let's call them virtual comfortable chairs right now, in a virtual gaming room. Um,
uh,
and I hope you'll feel good here in this situation.
yeah, I'm actually live from my coffee roaster. I didn't want to wake everyone up in the house because they're all still sleeping after Christmas.
You're a good person, a very good person. I would have woken them up. Let them.
So luckily, coffee roaster, they offered me their roasting room, which is a little bit quiet and private. The cafe is down the hall, and people are in there enjoying their coffee.
Okay. So, I would say, like I told you, the interview has two parts. Let's go to the first part of the interview, and let's talk a little bit about um, who is Glenn Drover. And we start with this question: where were you born, and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Chicago, Illinois, which is the middle of the USA,
Uh-huh.
in the north. And I grew up in the outskirts of the city, and we are still there today. I've worked for many companies on the West Coast in the video game industry, but always lived here in the Chicago area.
I see. So you are a Chicago. You are a Bulls fan then?
Yes, I'm a native.
You're a native. um, so I don't know. I only know. That's why I asked you about the Bulls. If you're a Bulls fan, because I only know a bit about basketball. I don't know anything else about other types of sports in America, which that sport which you call football, which you play with your hands, and and I think White Sox. I think that's a baseball team, right?
Yeah, very good. And the Cubs. That we have
Oh, you have to.
two
Yeah, yeah,
baseball teams.
yeah.
The Cubs and then the Bears are American football, and the Bulls, as you said, are basketball. And I was lucky enough to live through the Jordan era and see him play. It was amazing.
Well, you are a lucky man. You are a lucky man. So you grew up in Chicago. How did that shape your life? How did that have an impact on your life growing up outskirts of Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, Chicago is a very big city. There's about 10 million people in the whole area, in the city and the outskirts, and so it was great. We had access to just this amazing culture and sports and food, and it's a great place to be. The winter is very cold, so lots of time for gaming. And yeah, the summer is hot, and that's when we spend time outside. So it's very seasonal, indoor, outdoor, and yeah, I learned to game to spend the long, cold winters.
I see. Um, what were your parents' professions?
My father was an airline pilot for Delta, and took care of 5 kids.
Oh, so you had four siblings.
I had 4 siblings. Yeah,
How was that growing up with so many siblings?
it was chaos, and yeah, another reason to go outside.
You were the biggest, the smallest of the kids, or somewhere in the
Uh,
middle?
Second, number 2.
Number two. So you had to take
Yeah.
care of the other three.
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, clean up after them mostly.
So how many kids do you have now?
I have 3. Yeah, they're 22, 21, and 17.
I see. So you did having so many sisters. Well, I see it was good in a way. Oh, sorry, siblings. It was good in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having kids around is great. We just had Christmas night last night, a big party with the family, and it's great to have a big family and have everyone around you at the holidays. It's really nice.
Um, yeah, I have to ask you about your childhood because one way or another, childhood shapes a person. He informs why in so many ways will inform who will in what way a person will transform over time. How did what were your interests when you were a child? What interested you? Sciences or human?
History. For me, it was mostly history. I really, loved books about, the wars and about the flow of history, and it really captured my imagination to learn about the whole history of mankind. And it's definitely influenced, some of the games that I've designed. Age of Empires 3 was about, the age of colonization. Mosaic is about civilization. Railways of the World is, obviously about the expansion of railroads in North
North
America.
America, yeah.
So yeah, I really love the story of us, of people.
And what did you where did you study in university in Chicago, or you went somewhere else?
I went just north to Milwaukee, which is the next city north of Chicago, and I went to Marquette University and studied history and political science.
I see. So we went further on with and you are a child of the 70s, right?
Yes, that was my childhood. High school and college was in the early 80s.
How was it to grow up in the 70s in the U.S.?
Oh, wow. It was pretty wild. I mean, it was kind of the explosion of rock and roll.
Exactly.
Everyone was much more independent. As kids, my parents let us out, and we just found our own fun. There was no really video games until later. There was no cable television. There was no internet. so we had to make all of our own fun, and spent a lot of time just outdoors, hanging with our friends.
And did you play sports a lot?
I did. Yeah, I played some basketball, baseball, football. I was not great at any of them, but I really loved playing. Even a bit of soccer, a little bit of what you call football.
Yeah, because we play it with our foot, not with our hands. That way we could. That's why you call it football.
Makes sense, right? And you
Yeah. Um, and when did you start playing? When did you discover board games? Were there board games in?
Yeah, discovered them very early. I started playing games, with the family and with friends, maybe around 5 or 6 years old. And again, because I loved history, my parents, I still remember, they bought me two board games for Christmas when I was 7. One of them, they were both Avalon Hill games. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember the company. Hill. One was Tactics 2, which is a very old Avalon Hill game, and one was Third Reich, the board game about World War II, which was way too complicated for a 7-year-old. But I loved it. I opened the box and read the rules and played with the pieces on the board, and I didn't know how to do it properly, but it sparked my imagination and my desire to play more games like that.
And yeah, so did you play with the family a lot? Did you have game nights? Did you have things like that?
We didn't have game night, but my dad and I would play games, and we played a game about football. It was called Monday Night Football. It was a big, giant stadium with a slider that you chose your play, offensive and defensive, and then it would light up in the middle to show you what the result was. We played strategy games from Milton Bradley. They had the old strategy game line with Skirmish and Battle Cry, the original Civil War game. So we played a lot of games like that, board games with plastic pieces, and that really influenced me later when I had Eagle Games to make games like that again.
I see. And did when you went to university, did you play or you stopped for a while? You played all along, or through the high school years and university years?
Yeah, we did play a little bit, mostly card games for drinking, but we still did have a little bit of board games and a little bit of RPGs now and then. But yeah, we did slow down a little bit because we were so busy being social.
Chasing girls.
Chasing girls, being in the bars. So, every once in a while, I think I played Axis and Allies for the first time in college. And what was the Conquest of the Empire also? I saw those games for the first time in college.
And when did you after you have finished university, what did you do? Did you went straight to game design to work for video games, or you did something else in the meantime?
Yeah, I did one job before I jumped into video games. I sold steel. Chicago had in the early '80s a large steel
Yeah,
industry.
yeah, that's right.
So my first job out of college was selling steel, and I found that I didn't like it, and so I decided, if I'm going to do sales, what should I sell that I love? And I found a job at Microprose, Sid Meier's company.
Yeah,
In 1989, 1990, I joined them as a local salesperson for Chicago area, and eventually got promoted through the ranks over the years, and eventually was managing sales for all of North America for companies like PopCap, and eventually Electronic Arts bought PopCap.
I see. And did you enjoy doing that? Did you like doing that?
I love it, but but it wasn't creative. I really enjoyed being on the business side of the video game industry all through the 90s. But eventually I decided to start Eagle Games because it would let me be creative. I could design games and publish my own games instead of selling someone else's games.
How did you come to the idea of creating your own games? When did that came for the first time in your mind?
Yeah,
I would like to do this.
I always was designing games, and in college I designed a game based on a class that I had. I had a class about Latin American history, and we did the Mexican Civil War in one class. And I came back to my apartment in college and designed a game called Viva Mexico about the Mexican Civil War. And a friend of mine still has it. I just drew it on cardboard and made little pieces, and my friends loved it. They played it all the time.
I see. So it was planted, let's say, early on, so in your university years. What kind of a player were you, and did that change over time? Were you a social player or a more strategic player?
Yeah, definitely strategic and competitive. I really like games where I can win. And this wave of cooperative games I don't understand. I want to play for blood, and it's funny because we have a small group of players who have been playtesting Mosaic for the last 2 years, and they're very, very good. They've played the game maybe 100 times, and I can't beat them.
Well, I think Skype has a bit of a problem right now. Oh, okay. Now
Nope,
we're back on.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, there was another call. I'm on my phone. Sorry about that.
so you were saying
Yeah. So
you can't beat
yeah,
them anymore.
I can't beat these guys. I designed the game, but I can't seem to win anymore.
That's frustrating, isn't it? So this kind of a player, one way or another, goes into the designer, transforms into the designer, and the designer wants to make competitive games. So when you started Eagle Griffin Games, did you started to make board games, or you started to make video games?
Well, I started making board games, but very quickly I decided that it might be interesting to license the rights to these video games and make them into board games, because during the 90s and early 2000s, everyone was playing digital games really intensely. And I thought, well, we're losing that ability to play socially together as people, face to face. And I thought, well, let's see if we can take some of these really great games that people are playing on computers or on video game systems and make them into board games where we can all play with the great toys and play together socially. And that's where we did several. Sid Meier's Civilization. We did Age of Empires 3. We did Age of Mythology. We did Railroad Tycoon, which became Railway. Right. And so we had really great licenses and made some board games.
You went so practically during your youth, through your years, you went from the infancy of video games to the whatever are now. So you have probably played everything from Atari games to all other.
I did. Yeah, it was. I was one of the very early adopters in video games in arcades and then also in home. I bought really early systems like Odyssey 2 and Intellivision and Atari because I was just so into those games and just played video games all the time. It was so exciting because before that we didn't have any of that. It was the very first time you could play a game on a screen. It was pretty amazing.
So what you went through all the because from the let's say the 1980s till the late 1990s, board games were not that big. What made you why did you why do you want to make a company which would make board games?
Yeah, it was a good question. As I said, I've always liked them. I always enjoyed them, even in the era when it wasn't very popular. I'm kind of an omnivore with my gaming. I game on any platform, just as long as the game is good. But yeah, it was the decision was made because I could do it on a budget that was reasonable, right? I couldn't design a video game myself because the budgets are millions of dollars. So I thought, well, here's something that I can do that we can make really high quality for far less money. And again, I wanted to get back to social gaming, wanted to get back to face-to-face gaming. So that's when I formed Eagle. The idea was let's make big box games with all kinds of toys, like Axis and Allies and those games back, when they came out in the 80s, and bring them back. And, that was the idea. And then, followed up with the idea of these video game licenses to kind of bring people back to the table.
Using the video, practically using the popularity of the video games.
Exactly.
Which the video games had. Well, sorry. Did you, when you started the company, did you started with the idea I'm going to design all of these games, or you started with the idea of creating a company and hire someone else to do games?
Yeah, I did it to have my own games published at first. We did eventually do a few games that were not mine, but mostly design games and then publish them. That was the idea. I just wanted to do my games. And to be honest, the first few games weren't very good. They were pretty and they had good art and they had lots of toys, but the game design was not very good. I had to learn to become a better game designer over time.
And you started. When did you start Eagle Games? In
2000.
2000.
Yeah, I left Activision. I was working for Activision in the late 90s, and left Activision and started Eagle. I think September of 2000.
So in Europe there was already the modern board games were taking on. Also, I think in the beginning of late 90s, beginning of 2000s, also in the US. Were you exposed to modern board games early?
Yeah, I was. I went to Essen in I think my first Essen was in 2001, and Mayfair Games was here in Chicago. And they gave me some help getting a booth in Essen and learning it. And that was where I was first exposed to, what you would consider modern board games. As I said, I was always kind of involved with old board games like Avalon Hill and all these other kinds. But yeah, modern board games like Settlers of Catan and Puerto Rico and all those kinds of games that in the early 2000s, that was my first exposure. Was after I'd already started Eagle, because Eagle's first games were really more Ameritrash games than they were modern games.
Yeah, modern. How are your hands?
Oh, good. We're good.
Okay. Did you like? You are used to what American games were giving you. Did you like what these Euro games give you, or this new experience give you, which is less story but more mechanisms and going in that direction? Did you like that?
Yeah, I really did. It really blew my mind. I was like, wow, this new idea of less luck and more kind of strategy and the player has the control of whether they win or lose based on how well they play the game. And that was, to me, really amazing. So I started incorporating those kinds of mechanics and that kind of thinking in games, maybe in 2004 or 5. And that's what ended up resulting in Age of Empires 3 was the idea that, you would want a game that had those clever mechanics. And Age of Empires 3, I think, was one of the very first worker placement games.
Yeah.
That kind of idea of, clever mechanics and, strategic gameplay. It was really, no luck. That was amazing. I think that was a breakthrough for me as a designer in suddenly realizing that games were progressing and they were getting more interesting than just rolling dice and
seeing what happens.
Yeah, it's playing in a game where it's mostly luck or a lot of luck driven. It's not as satisfying. So as a designer, I think I grew up and learned a lot from those early. We called them Euro games back then because they came out of Europe.
Out of Europe, yeah. That's the only. Yeah. Did you started at some point? I think you worked also with Martin Wallace on some. Did you enjoy working with other designers? Is it?
Yeah, it was almost an accident. I wanted to utilize the license of Railroad Tycoon, and Martin at the time had designed his railroad game, which is Age of Steam,
yeah.
And everyone was loving it. But the word on the street was, hey, this is a little bit heavy. It's very intense. And I said, okay. I contacted Martin, and we met at Essen, and I said, what if you could make a version of Age of Steam that was more accessible, that was just not as, crunchy and had a lower learning curve, just so it would be more accessible to a broad gamer audience. And we would put the, Railroad Tycoon license on it. And so he worked on that game and sent me a prototype, and it was good, but it was a little too simple. And I wasn't planning on getting involved in the design of it. But eventually I said, hey, can you rework this and make it a little bit more interesting with a little bit more to do? And he sent me a completely different game. And I said, no. I liked that first prototype. It just needed a little more depth. And so instead of having him continue to work on the design, I said, I know what I want, and I'll just do the rest of the design myself. So it was not really intentional that we worked together. It was more that he had created a good base for a game, but it just needed more fleshing out and more depth. And so I created the second half of the game, I guess you could say.
I see. Did you find it fulfilling? Did you find it easy to work with another designer, especially a designer of the caliber of Martin Wallace?
Yeah, well, as I said, it was interesting because we almost worked very separately. He was living in the UK, I was living here in America, and we didn't really collaborate so much as he did part and I did part separately.
Yeah.
So it was very non-collaborative.
But you until the end, or at the end, when the prototype was, let's call it, ready to go to print, did you discuss it? I like it, I don't like it. Did you?
No.
Nope.
Not really. No, he was done with his part of the work, right? So we basically were paying him to do that work. It was a work for hire. So we really didn't communicate on anything after he submitted that first part. And I said, okay, you're done and I'll take over. And that was it. So it was the most uncollaborative collaboration.
I see. Most of your games are done by yourself. Do you enjoy designing on your own?
I do. I really enjoy that part of the process. It's intimidating at first, right? Because you're looking at a blank page and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to make? And there's no one kind of there to help move the process along and inspire you. You're almost, it is a bit lonely, but ultimately when you create something really good and you are really pleased with the result, it's really satisfying.
I see. Um, you without one? I don't know if you want it or not, but the designer hat is one hat. The developer hat is a different hat. The
Yeah.
the the publisher hat a whole different hat. Do you enjoy taking one off, putting one on, taking the other off, putting it on? Do you like all the process?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, like I said, I was a business guy for most of my career, and I was missing the creative part. So by being able to wear all the hats, it's very satisfying. As long as you are comfortable doing it, and I am, it's really great because you get to, kind of follow the process from the idea to the prototype to the finished game, create all the assets, work with talented artists and graphic designers, and then shepherd the project all the way through production and sales and marketing. Really satisfying to go from the very beginning all the way to seeing your finished product on the shelf at a big store like Target or Walmart, and realize that you did all of it. It's pretty amazing.
How do you work with artists? Do you work closely with them? Do you send them a list of things which you want from them, or do you work close? You get something, you tell them I need different things, or how do you work with an artist?
So generally, I will tell them what I'm looking for, right? I'll work with them and say, here's the piece that we need, and I'll even send them some mock-ups because, say, for example, on Mosaic, it's a historical subject. We just did an expansion, and for the cover art, I sent our artist, in this case Annie Stegg, who's really talented. I sent her a couple of images of like an Egyptian king or general wearing this blue helmet, this giant blue helmet, and I said, "This is the look that I'm looking for, but of course in your style." And so I'll art direct them
I see.
on exactly what I'm looking for and give them some samples so that they, in case they don't know that part of history, or it gives them some context to start working.
Um, do you sorry? Do you also? I have asked you about the developer's hat. Sometimes it's hard to be your own developer. Um, are you harsh on yourself as a developer?
I mean, yes and no. It has to get done, right? If you want to be productive, you can't just, being a casual game designer, you don't have to work on a timeline. But for a business, when you're running the business, you are harsh on yourself and saying, get to work, be creative. We have to have something, to put on Kickstarter or to launch into the market in, a few months. So you can't screw around. You have to get the work done. So yeah, it puts, you have to put pressure on yourself to finish that work and to move on to the next thing.
So when you when you design, do you start or how big of a fan are you on theme, and how much do you think it should come out in your game?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of theme. I mean, but I want the theme to be integrated into the design. So usually I'll start with theme, about what the game is going to be about, and then I'll change the mechanics to kind of bring that theme out. So, for example, in Age of Empires 3, or that game was supposed to have that feel of, colonizing, North and South America and sending missionaries and, all the different aspects of what that meant. And so it informed the way the mechanics worked. I wanted to make sure that all the aspects of that were brought out in how the worker placement was. So we designed unique workers. They weren't just generic workers.
I think it was the first game which did that. You had unique workers with different abilities.
Yeah, and really the theme is what made that happen. It was trying to replicate the feel for the different kind of aspects that went into that, that period where you had captains that were exploring the world, and you had soldiers that were conquering the world. You had missionaries that were converting, and you had what was the other one? It's been a while. I can't remember. Merchants that were making money, and so it was really the theme that led to the mechanics in that case.
I see. Okay. Well, because that's why I asked about theme, because in your latest games you have introduced some quirky themes. Raccoon Tycoon or Lizard Wizard, which I have they're practically economic games with weird themes. How did you come with those? Raccoon Tycoon, now come on. You're adding raccoons and lizards. Raccoons and lizards.
Well, Raccoon Tycoon was a game where the idea was to create a fun and better version of games like Catan that are economic games or commodities games. And so in this case, it was mechanics first. I wanted to make a game where you could always do something fun on your turn. That every time it was your turn, you could do something that mattered. And that was, Catan's a genius game, and it was a breakthrough game, but it can be challenging if you don't roll well. You can be your turn and you have to pass, or you can't do something very good. So I thought, wow, that game is a classic and it sold millions of copies. How can I make a game like that just improves the weakness? And so in the case of Raccoon Tycoon, it was mechanics first. And the theme was picked because I wanted it to be a game that was cuddly and adorable so that it would appeal to a broad audience. I wanted as many people as possible to play it because it's a gateway game. It's meant to be an introduction to the hobby and to the to gaming. So it needed to be adorable.
Lizard is a bit more complex than Raccoon Tycoon. That was when I first saw the games. I was really these are economic games with anthropomorphized. How is it called? Anthropomorphic, right? Animals.
Anthropomorphic animals, yes.
How do you? When do you design expansions? Do you design expansions while you design the game, or do you design expansions afterwards? Do you design with expansions in your head, or you add them afterwards?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes the expansion will start evolving when you're working on the game itself. Because, for example, in Mosaic, there were aspects of the game that we didn't want to include in the base game because it would make it too complex or too much about military. But then when we did our Kickstarter, some players want that. They want that extra layer of content and military aspect, but it changes the game. So we didn't want to change the game until people had gotten it and be able to play the base game and enjoy it, because it was very, I think, balanced. But then the expansion, so we had some aspects of the expansion that we knew we wanted to include. Even when the game was being designed, we're like, okay, this is going to change the game. but it'll be great for an expansion. It'll give people who want the game to be a little bit more, a little bit different. It will give them what they want without us mucking around with the design. It's really important, I think, in designs to know when to stop. Some designers keep adding things and adding things and adding things. They have an idea. They're like, oh, that'll be cool. And they add that to the game. Sometimes you have to edit yourself and keep the design more elegant and simple, and then add things maybe later. And that's where expansions are perfect.
So, in a way, sometimes you design some content comes though afterwards. I do like that you said that designers should know when to stop. That's when the developer hat comes on.
Right. Exactly.
Because I believe that not knowing what your game is might create. I do not like designs where I will give you 100 possibilities. You play the game the way you want to. In a way that tells me that you don't know what your game is about. You
Right.
don't know what you want to give me.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't finished forming what the game should be. You're saying, oh, it can be anything.
Yep. One more question. One question is, what is fun to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think fun to me in the context of gaming is, of course, putting together a great plan and playing really smart and then winning, right? If you can leave a game session going, oh, wow, I really played well and I won the game, and I feel it's a great accomplishment. Right, and that's one thing about gaming in modern games that is very satisfying is, playing it really well and feeling like you did you accomplished that, and then going, well, what if I tried a different way? Could I still win if I tried this other way? So games that let you explore different strategies and still win. They don't have one solution. So that's really fun for me, is to create a game like that, and then when you're playing, winning because you played better than the other guy.
And in a way, you stepped a bit on it, but what is your design philosophy?
Yeah, my main philosophy is I want to give players the opportunity to make interesting decisions, right? You want to, and this is a Sid Meier philosophy that I borrowed, that it's you're not creating a game for your own amusement, right? That that making the game itself process was fun. You're making the game so that the experience is interesting for the player. That, because some old games, like Avalon Hill games, you might move 1,000 pieces around for hours, and you're really only making a couple of key decisions. It's much better, I think, to create a game where the player, every single time it's their turn, they're making an interesting decision that matters and will affect the outcome. It's much more satisfying.
So, do you think if you are having fun designing, do you see yourself as a player who designs, so you design a bit for yourself and you think that players who think like you, feel like you, will also have fun with the game, or you design more with players in your mind, just players, not you also?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a little bit of both. Sometimes I'm having fun. Like Mosaic was definitely a game for me. It was a game that I didn't see it out in the marketplace, and so I designed the game that I love. And Age of Empires 3, I think, too. But other games, for other people that, I like them, but I don't love them. And they're designed with a certain audience in mind that's not necessarily me.
I see.
Like I'm
Sorry.
working right now about fairies, and it's definitely not a game for me, but it's I think a game that will appeal to the fans that liked Wingspan. That instead of collecting birds and that sort of thing, you're collecting different kinds of fairy folk, and it's a game aimed at that audience more than a historical gamer.
I see. Um, what was your first published game?
The first published game was called War: Age of Imperialism.
I see. And do you think?
Very,
Sorry.
it was very Ameritrashy, meaning lots of miniatures and dice, and it was like mashed up with a computer game, set in that era.
I see. Do you think you have grown a lot since then as a designer?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was not a very good game. It was too long, too much luck, too much fiddliness. And as I said earlier, the exposure to more modern game design and mechanics really helped me grow as a designer. The games that I create now are much more efficient. You can play them in an hour to 2 hours. There's so many interesting choices and decisions, very low luck. So yeah, I think I've progressed as a designer since the early days for sure.
Did you? Sorry. Sorry.
Bless,
I'm sorry.
bless you.
I'm sorry. Um, would you revisit some of your first games and redo any of them with your knowledge now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I think better to leave the broken, horrible things alone.
Okay. Could I ask you uh, if you can tell us a bit about how is a day in a normal day in Glenn Drover's life as a board game designer, publisher, and developer?
Yeah, it's really every day is different, which is why I kind of like it. Some days I'm just going to do play testing and game design and be very focused on that because you really need to focus. You can't jump around very much when you're, at least I can't. For game design, you have to spend several hours thinking about how the game works and the different aspects of design. And then most of my days, though, are spent doing emails back and forth with graphic designer, with artist, with the business side. So I'm doing a normal business workday where part of my day is on the development and project management. I'm talking to the factory about production. So it's really varied, but it's mostly like a normal developer, publisher, business day. And then some days you'll have the game dev and playtesting side. So it's a real, there's all kinds of different days, but it's mostly those two kinds of things basically.
And how many hours do you work per day?
Wow. This last week I had a very busy week, so I worked maybe 65 hours. I tracked it because it was so busy. We were acquired, actually. Forbidden Games was acquired in April by a larger company called University Games. And so I flew out to San Francisco last week and was there for 3 days for meetings, and then flew back. And then on the weekend, I had some game design and development I had to do. And then on Monday, it was business in the morning. And then I had a PR filming event in the afternoon and evening. And I got home at like 8 p.m. So very long day. So yeah, it's some days very long, and some days, it's not as stressful. So it's what's nice is that you can make your own schedule most of the time.
I see. So it's not easy wearing a lot of hats, is it?
It's not easy. No, it's definitely a more full-time job for sure.
Um, and now I have some two more gaming questions, two or three more gaming questions, and then we go to our questionnaire. What is your most played game?
That I enjoy playing?
Yes. Your most played game, yeah. Not your own.
I think Yeah, I think I really have played Le Havre a lot and really like it over the years. I don't know if you know it.
I know it, of course, I know it. Uwe Rosenberg
Yeah,
design. I like it also.
yeah, it's a great game, and I've played it, maybe 30 or 40 times. So it's probably the most played game that wasn't mine.
I see. And what is your favorite game?
Well, hopefully it's the same thing, right?
Well,
That I get a chance to play my favorite game as often as possible.
and do you have a favorite designer?
Um, yeah, I mean, I like several. So, I mean, Martin is great. I think that Uwe is great, and yeah, it's all of the guys that are making games that are kind of strategic and you know um, thinky. I like a lot, but playable.
I see.
The game has to be playable.
Um, and my last question in this part of the interview is: would you want to add something? At some point, Orson Welles told a nice quote, which I always say in these interviews that I enjoy it a lot. He said, "Ignorance, there is no other authority like it," and I do not want to be ignorant. So, if I haven't asked you a question which you might have wanted me to ask you. Uh, is there one? Now is
Oh,
the
that's no. It's been a really thorough interview. I think that you've asked me a lot of good questions. Yeah, I just would mention that I'm really happy with how Mosaic turned out. It's my favorite game to play of mine right now, and it's pretty new. So I don't know that a lot of people have discovered it yet. We've just fulfilled the Kickstarter in North America. We haven't even got it out to everyone in Europe yet. It's just starting to ship. So it's something that I'm really pleased with and think that people will like. So I'm excited about it.
well, we have already made the playthrough on my channel, and I have talked a lot. I liked it a lot. It entered my top 10 of this of games I've played this year. So it is a very good game which I enjoy a lot, especially because I like history when I was a child a lot, and any game that touches on that subject gets my attention. And Civ, and I really like Civ type games. Um, Even if they are a bit longer, but yours is a shorter one which works. Usually,
Yeah,
short Civ games do not work. Uh,
it's hard
yeah, it's
to have
hard.
everything
It is.
there and
Yep.
still make it fast playable.
Now let's go to the questionnaire, and I'm going to
Okay.
start with what is your favorite word?
Word?
Yeah, this questionnaire comes from Marcel Proust. It's a questionnaire that it derives from the Proust questionnaire. A French presenter, Bernard Pivot, took it. He made it a bit different, and the same questionnaire which Bernard Pivot had was taken by James Lipton in
Uh,
Inside, and he used it at Inside's Actor Studio, and I blatantly stole it from him, and I am as he did from Bernard Pivot, and I'm doing the questions now. So the first question is, what is your favorite word?
okay, I'll go with flow.
Low.
Uh, Flow, FLOW,
Ah,
meaning
flow. Okay. Yeah.
it's an interesting concept that I've been exploring lately in the process of being creative and efficient and effective and productive. And flow is an interesting idea of where you get your mind into this certain zone where you are able to be productive and creative and stay there. Right? It's not easy. Right? People get creative blocks. I guess my favorite word is flow.
And what is your least favorite word?
Wow. What is my least favorite word? Can't.
That's a good one. What turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
Yeah, I think it's connection, right? I really I think I talk about all the design ideas and processes, but the goal is human connection, is the ability for us to have something that can bring us together, and that's why I love what I do. It's a way to get everyone together and connecting and being social, and it's the most satisfying thing to me when I hear a story from someone who's played my games and they said, "Oh, I love your game, and I love it because it reminds me of all the time I spent with my brother or my kids or whatever." So that's the thing that makes me satisfied and happy is the ability to bring that into the world.
What turns you off?
Uh, yeah, I think people who are bossy and try to make other people do what they want, right? It's never good. It's, people need to feel, like they have control of their destiny in their life, and people who are pushy and, that turns me off.
What sound or noise do you love?
Wow, these are interesting questions. What sound do I love? I think music, right? It's such a broad topic, but I love being having it can change your whole mood. It can put you in a totally different place. It's such a powerful thing, and it's so generic. That's a generic answer, but as far as just the ability to make you happy or remember something, it's a very powerful trigger. So I'm going to cheat a little and say just generally music.
I see. Um, and what sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, wow. I guess crying. it's 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 very upsetting, right? Because you feel like you can't do anything to help that. It's frustrating. So a child crying or on an airplane it's not that it's bothering you, it's that you can't help them. It's frustrating. So crying is very, it's challenging.
I see. Um, huh, something happens. What? Sorry. Which profession, outside the one you already do, would you like to attempt?
I would like to be a teacher someday in my retirement. I've done a little bit of teaching in a local community college for history, and I've really enjoyed it.
And what profession you would not like to attempt?
Wow. I guess, would I not like to attempt? I guess working in a prison. That sounds. I have a friend who does it, and it's got to be terrible work.
And my last question is, and this is an if, a big if heaven exists, what would you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Hopefully, he says, "Nice try."
On that note, I will end the interview here. Thank you a lot, Mr. Drover. It was a lot of fun talking to you this evening here in Eastern Europe, there in North America, and good morning, I hope, in North America. Warmer Eastern Europe than North America, which is rather cold right now. And Yeah, I would kindly ask you to not close the conversation. I will do the outro, and then we will speak a bit after for a few minutes.
Sure.
Thank you again, and if you want to say something in the end.
No, just thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. Appreciate it.
It was, believe you me, it was my pleasure. I will. And now I want to thank everyone who came and watched live. I will thank everybody who will come and watch after the fact. If you enjoy these interviews, if you like our playthroughs, please like, share, and subscribe, because it keeps the internet alive and keeps us going. And again, I'm thanking Glenn Rover for accepting the invitation to do this. This very, very introspective, I think, I hope, interview, and also fun, I hope, to watch. Until next time, I will say, as it's written here, it's written in Romanian, but I will translate it. It says, play a lot, play loads, as you Brits say, have fun, and until next time, bye bye, fine folks, wherever in the world you are.